call me Roy.
Hi, welcome to Roy's Book Reviews. Hey, welcome back to Roy's Book Reviews, or if this is your first time checking out one of my reviews, welcome aboard. In today's video, I'm going to discuss a novel by the esteemed author Richard Price. I previously discussed one of his books, Lush Life, in one of the early videos on this channel, and at the time, I didn't really know who Richard Price was. That video was like a collection of like 3 books that I'd read that were each about cops, detectives, beat cops, whatever the case may be, going after criminals, trying to solve some sort of crime that had taken place. This time around, I am going to discuss a single book by Richard Price. But at the time of the first video I discussed him in, I did not really know who he was. Afterwards, I Googled him, and it turns out that he's a very accomplished author. And he's written books that were adapted into some movies that I've seen and really loved. And then I checked out his Wikipedia page recently, and I was like, wow, this guy has really accomplished a great deal. So now I'm going into this video knowing considerably more about the author than I did the last time I talked about him. This particular book, The Whites, he wrote under a pseudonym, Harry Brandt. I'm not really sure why he did that. I think he felt that there was something a little bit experimental and a little different than his usual books. So he felt that he should write it under an assumed name. But whatever the reason, whether he calls himself Richard Price or Harry Brandt or Mickey Mouse, Mr. Price was born to fictionalize the world of New York City cops. With The Whites, we are introduced to a group of individuals that forged a bond in their earliest days of police work. Years later, most of them have moved on to other endeavors, driven out of law enforcement for one reason or another. The youngest of them, Billy, is still a cop because the event from his past that could have ended his career, killing someone while high on cocaine, failed to be his undoing, in spite of efforts by a journalist who thought she had him dead to rights. Each member of the group has an old case that haunts them, ones in which they failed to bring a murderer to justice. Catching a killer does not guarantee a conviction, after all. Whether still on the force or having moved on to other methods of income earning, members of the group known collectively as the Wild Geese are haunted by dreams on certain nights about the worst of those who got away. At the beginning of The Whites, one of the killers from back in the day is himself killed. The murder takes place in a very public space, public transportation location. Yet there are no witnesses, no arrests made. There's just a corpse that brings the past into the present. Additional murders follow. Justice is belatedly claiming the lives of killers who beat the rap. But karma doesn't work so neatly. Something is up, and Billy is determined to figure out what. Getting in the way of his investigation is the fact that his family is being targeted by someone who may or may not have something to do with the mounting body count. A red handprint is put on the back of his son's coat by a stranger who approaches him after school. Billy's father, who lives with them because he goes in and out of knowing who he is and what year he's living in, is kidnapped. Or rather, he is driven into the city neighborhood where he once worked as a cop. Billy is a good enough detective to track down his father's whereabouts. But even with his home put under surveillance, the harassment continues. Now, to go any deeper into the plot of The Whites would be to venture into spoiler territory, so I will refrain from doing so. I'll also add that my only qualms with The Whites is that there are a considerable number of characters, and at times I had difficulty keeping them straight. But the writing is top-notch, as is the case in any Richard Price book, and once enough pages are under the reader's belt, it's easier to remember who is who and how they're connected to each other. And it all builds to an effective and satisfying climax. When all is said and done, The Whites is about those in our life who are forgiven almost no matter what they do, and heinous acts that can never be forgiven or forgotten. For some foolish reason, I let quite a few years pass between the last Richard Price book that I read, Lush Life, as I mentioned earlier, and this one. Much less time will be allowed to elapse between The Whites and the next Richard Price novel that I decide to pick up. So that is all I have to say about The Whites. If you are a fan of crime fiction, particularly the grittier tales, especially those set in New York City, which there's something about this city that just is a character unto itself. There are a lot of familiar locations to me in this story. A lot of the scenes take place in areas close to where I grew up. But anyway, I highly recommend Richard Price. If he's written any other books as Harry Brandt, pick those up too. I'm sure they're just as good. No matter what name he uses, he knows how to spin a yarn about the good guys and the bad guys. And speaking of New York stories, go Knicks. Until the next time, happy reading.